Welcome to the 1.1 online lesson. There's really three key words that we're going to talk about in this lesson, and that beginning vocabulary is number one is an event, and you can think of an event as anything that could have happened. It's an action, an experiment, something I'm going to do. And in this class, a lot of times the events will be rolling a die, spinning a spinner, flipping a coin, things like that. It's something that I do. Second keyword here is outcome. All right, outcome is something that could happen or a possible result of what I do. So when I roll a die, it's possible that I get the number 4. The outcome is the number 4. That's what happened. So an outcome is the thing that happened. And the sample space is just a list of everything that can happen, or all the possible outcomes that could occur. So we're going to cover those three words. Make sure you get those three words down and you understand what they mean by the end of this lesson: event, outcome, and sample space. So here's a simple example just to begin. Mr. Henderson is going to roll a 6-sided die. Okay, so the event is I'm going to roll a die. That's the event. So the event is basically just going to roll the die. Okay, so I'm going to put roll die. All right, outcome. Well, outcome is what is going to happen when I roll that die. So I'm going to roll the die, and the outcome is a 1. So I got a 1, and that is the outcome. Outcome 1. Sample space is a list of all of the possible outcomes, and all the things that can happen when I roll that die. Things that could occur is I could get a 1, I could get a 2, and we know that basically I could get any number 1 through 6, and I am going to list those numbers off 1 through 6. So the event is I roll a die. The outcome that I got when I rolled it was a 1. A sample space, which is everything that could have happened, is the numbers 1 through 6. We list them off separated by commas. A slightly more sophisticated example would be here's a menu from my interesting restaurant I created. It's called The Place to Eat. And when you open the menu in this restaurant, you basically choose which food item you'd like. You can order breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And which drink you'd like. You can order water, milk, or apple juice. So the event is basically placing an order. So the event is actually just me placing an order, so some kind of order. The outcome would be what I choose. So maybe I order breakfast, and let's see, I felt like having an apple juice. So breakfast and apple juice. That's my order. That's the outcome. I ordered breakfast and apple juice. Okay, sample space would list everything possible that I can order, and this is a little bit of a longer sample space. Sample spaces do begin with a bracket, and then we just list off everything. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this. I like to keep organized in my head, and I like to go like breakfast water, breakfast milk, breakfast apple juice, and I just kind of list those off. Breakfast water, breakfast milk, breakfast apple juice. Okay, that kind of is all the possible breakfast combinations. Okay, then I can go ahead and I can move on to lunch. It's possible that I order lunch with water, lunch with milk, lunch with apple juice, and I'd list those out too. Lunch with water, lunch with milk, lunch with apple juice. And likewise, I could do the same with dinner. I can order basically any of the 3 drinks with dinner if I'd like. So that could be dinner water, dinner milk, and dinner apple juice. And I always do close this with a closing bracket. So the event was I placed an order. The outcome when I placed an order was breakfast apple juice, but sample space is all the possible orders that could be made. And notice it is really nice to have some sort of structure when you try to list or try to figure out what all the possible outcomes are there in all the possible orders that I could make. Another kind of idea or strategy would be to use this organized table idea. So I had 3 foods. One was breakfast, one was lunch, and one was dinner. So I put foods on the top. And I had 3 drinks to choose from: water, milk, and apple juice. And if you've ever done Punnett squares in science, this is the same idea. I'm just going to put the letter combinations together. Maybe I have breakfast with water, and here's my BW, breakfast with water. Maybe I have lunch with water. Maybe I have dinner with water. And I could basically fill out the rest of these. Breakfast with milk, lunch with milk, dinner with milk. And now I have breakfast with apple juice, lunch with apple juice, dinner with apple juice. And this is actually the same 9 outcomes that I had listed on the previous slide when I kind of tried to do this little arrows pointing to help me come up with these 9 items. So there's just 2 different strategies. One, I kind of like to draw lines. Another strategy is just make a table to help yourself out. So here's kind of another third concept, and we'll wrap it up today. Remember, the ideas today are events. Those are things that are going to occur. In this case, I'm going to flip a coin. That's the event. We have outcomes. Outcomes are whatever occurs when I do that, or so the outcome would be whatever happens when I flip this coin. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this coin. And the outcome is heads. I got heads from my outcome. Right? And a sample space is all the possible things that could happen. In this case, there's only 2 things that could happen. That's heads or tails. But in this problem is asking me to look at what if I flip a coin 3 times. The key is 3 times in a row. And that's a little bit tougher. I might sit here and try to think about what can happen. I could get heads, 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 tails, heads, tails, heads, and then I might get lost. So there's just this concept of a tree diagram right here. And here's what it looks like. And we'll be doing a lot of tree diagrams in the future. But for now, this is kind of the first time we've done it, so I'll just introduce it to you. The first time I flip a coin, there's 2 things that can happen. It's kind of a fork in the road. I flip the coin and I can get a heads, or I could get a tails. That's really what happens. So it's like, hey, what's going to happen when I flip the coin? I either get heads or I get tails. And regardless of what happens when I do this first flip, heads or tails, when I flip it the second time, okay, there's also 2 things that could happen the second time. I could get a heads or I could get a tails the second time. So right now what I've got drawn is I flip a coin, I get heads. I flip a coin again, I get heads. That's what this path would say. If I flip the first time, get heads, and the second time and get tails, then I would land right here. Of course, I could flip tails the first time, and then there are 2 outcomes remaining for the next flip. Now right now I only have 2 flips of a coin on the screen, so I'm going to add heads and tails on each of these because that would represent my 3rd flip. So let's take a look here at all the possible things that could occur. And now I am going to flip the coin 3 times and we're going to record what happens here. So I get heads, heads, heads. I happen to get 3 heads in a row. Okay, so the outcome for me was heads, heads, heads. That was the outcome for me. Can you see where that is in the tree diagram? Okay, that would be this path. The first flip, I get a head. The second flip, I get heads. The third flip, I got heads. That's the path that I traveled on in my story. But all the other paths represent everything that's possible here. It's possible I would get a heads, and then a heads, and then a tails, so I could list that off. Heads, head, tails is the next road. Okay, just for the sake of showing you with some color, the next path that's possible. Maybe I get heads the first time, and then tails the second time, and then heads the third time. That would be this path here, heads, tails, heads, and I would record that as heads, tails, heads. Okay. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, let me mark these off here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 ends on this tree. There's 8 ends. That means there's actually would be 8 outcomes I would list if I were to list all outcomes on the side here. So that wraps up the main idea today.